only read that, I've never actually heard it spoken. It's awful. I thought where it was going to end up was like, and then he grew up in Puerto Rico, spent some time in New York. So anyway, I'm going to talk about transcending physical location and leading from afar, if it's not apparent by the title slide. That probably is. So, I'm just going to tell you a story. As soon as I figure out how to work the clicker. So, I lived in Seattle, working for Microsoft, that makes sense. I was in Seattle. I don't know how many of you have been to Seattle when it's not July to September. And specifically July 5th, when it stops raining, to approximately the day before Memorial Day, because that's the sunny days and then everything else is gray and awful. So my wife and I decided that, man, we just cannot live here anymore. We both grew up in California. We said, that's it. This is driving us crazy. We had, the final straw was 35 days of straight rain, or 3 months of straight rain, 35 inches. We figured that our house, or the roof on our house, shed a swimming pool of rain, some of which came into the house. And we decided, that's it, we're out. So we started scanning basically took 4 different places that we wanted to live. This was one of the ones that we looked at. We actually did this spreadsheet of weighted values, what's the thing, and stuff. That's the place that Microsoft got. And then the place that ended up at the bottom of the list was San Luis Obispo. On the bottom of the list, if you actually did the numbers. Yeah. So, we did all this, and we drove down here, and was like, oh my God. This place is absolutely amazing. And so we bought some land. We ended up moving in and bought a house and moved down here. And so I went to my boss, who was a guy who reported to Steve Ballmer, who was the CEO of the company, and said, I'm moving. And he said, well, I'm sorry, we'd really like to keep you at the company. I said, well, I didn't say I'm quitting. I said, I'm moving. And he said, well, I guess we can try that. Where are you moving to? San Luis Obispo, like most people. I've been through there. No one's actually been here. They've only been through it. Hey, San Luis Obispo. That's nice. I'll have to stop sometime. So, one thing that had to happen was this company had to get comfortable with me being somewhere else, being 800 miles away and at least 2 flights, unless you fly private. I'm telling you, I've only done that a couple times. And I never want to pay for that. So, and the other alternative is United, going through San Francisco or LA. But I basically, we took the family. It was the day after the All-Star game, when it was up in Seattle, and we moved. We moved to San Luis Obispo. And so, I'm down here, and I'm not totally going to figure out how this is going to work, but I'm going to try it. And I think I had about 1,000 people in my organization, and I was doing just MSN stuff, Messenger and Hotmail and all these other fun things that I developed with some friends over many years. And all of a sudden started feeling like, wow, this is pretty possible. There's a whole lot of tools that we use to communicate, so I can actually be maybe more effective in Redmond which is where Microsoft is located, Redmond, Washington, not actually Seattle. And maybe I can be better. So I started doing this commute thing back and forth between San Luis Obispo and Seattle. And every week for 6 years, I flew back and forth. I put on 1 million miles on United. Yeah, whichever goes, wow, man, 1 million miles, that's awesome. I go, not if you had to fly them. And that's my coach. I'm small, so the middle seat doesn't bother me too much, but that's not great. So here I am, and I'm going back and forth, but only 3 days a week, and then kind of 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week, and 2 days a week. And I'm actually, because I'm not in, I start to make sure that the managers that are working in my organization have, like, what do you got to do, man? You got to, give them all these marching orders that they can just go execute all by themselves. And, the culture at Microsoft is sort of micromanagement. You got to hop in, and you help people, and you dig into their stuff. And, in fact, you don't have to do that because they're entirely capable of doing it all by themselves. So I started being a more disciplined manager in terms of writing reviews and giving very explicit instructions at the beginning of the year and saying, all right, any way you want to get this done, it's up to you. You know what your budget is, you know what you got to do. Go do it. People started to get more efficient. They got better. My group started to grow. Steve Barnes goes, man, this actually works. This doesn't make sense. You don't even work here. And I tell you, when I left, he had this kind of, oh, you cheater. Leaving? I'm not leaving. No, I'm just down the road a little bit. You know, really, you can just jump on I-5 and get up to Seattle. So, how did I actually do it? Because this is the key. It's kind of a weird thing. So, you have these two juxtaposed images. One, which is having an office full of people. The connection is there all the time. You're walking down the hallway, you're seeing the same people, you're by the water cooler, you're hearing all these different things that are going on. It's an environment that actually has, it has action, it has energy. Now you look at the desk over here, and it's devoid of it. It's just kind of this little lonesome place. And this isn't my office here. My office here is actually a lot darker than this one. It's in the bottom floor of my house. And it's kind of, lonely. You get a lot of work done, though. People stopping by your office. But that's one of the things that's so great about working with people. They stop by your office. You stop by theirs. You mix it up. You start talking with each other. Well, that wasn't happening anymore. Not the way it was happening in the office. But it does. And I was able to make it work because I was using a whole bunch of tools that you all have access to today and that I use judiciously. I mean, I don't use them judiciously. I use them every day, all the time. And here's how I did it. So, we already talked about Twitter, I think, right? I use Twitter, and here's the thing, right? To be a remote leader and to be away from everybody, you have to have personal touch. So at some point, you actually have to know who these folks are, and you have to have some identity with them. So you had to have that contact point initially. When I was flying back and forth, I used to actually bring name cards with me because there's a time when you can't have a computer on when you land and when you take off. I used to bring, you can ask my wife because I used to keep them in my closet pulling out every Monday morning when I go up. And I'd quiz myself on names. So when I walk down the hallway and somebody goes, yeah, don't you hate this? Hey, Blake, and you go, hey, you, yeah, what's happening with you? So I hated doing that, so I started to, quiz myself so I had their names. What project they worked on, what their job was, and something personal about them that I could relate to. Something that had nothing to do with work. But I still wasn't present, so I had to make myself present. So I wasn't doing this back then because Twitter really didn't exist when I was at Microsoft in any substantive way. But I did do things like Facebook. I was actually on Facebook when it was still a university product. Marcus, a friend and acquaintance of mine, and he got me an EDU account. Got the guy at Pepperdine to give me one, so I was actually using that and connecting with people. LinkedIn, does anybody use this? How many people are on LinkedIn? Okay. It's a great way to actually to have recruiters as your best friends. As it turns out, I think that. But it's actually a really good place to network and put yourself out there, and all of a sudden kind of be present. You're present. You're not physically there, but you're present. Facebook, the same thing. You have updates. Twitter, you have updates. You can be in the room even when you're not. You can be on somebody's phone even when you're not in the room. And then MSN Messenger, which was a product that I did with a couple of friends of mine, and grew that pretty big, at least outside the United States. And Messenger was very, very important to me because it was the tool that we used inside the company at Microsoft to give real-time updates and status on where we were. So I would be calling into a conference room, and I'd be, the cardboard form in a chair or whatnot, and on a Polycom device. And I would always make sure I probably have like 300-400 people on my Messenger list. I'd make sure that 2 of the people in the room knew that I was on Messenger, and if I couldn't hear anything, or if you've ever had, Polycom hell, as I like to call it, you're trying to get your word in, and there's so much action that they can't hear you. I just instant message somebody in the room and say, hey, I'm trying to get a point across. Can you tell them to shut up? And all of a sudden they say, hey, Blake wants to say something. I say, oh, thank you guys, and then I'd say something. And it was actually really important. But that allowed me to show up and